The sun of the alien world burned faintly orange across the wide horizon, a soft light that made the sky look endless. The land stretched into rolling cliffs and sharp ridges carved by time and storms older than memory. Somewhere between those ridges, hidden under the stone, lay caverns filled with crystals that shone like stars. These caves had drawn many explorers over the years, but few had returned with more than small shards. The caves were dangerous, deep and mysterious. Among the small group of human researchers who came to this planet, one young man carried a heart more curious than the rest. His name was Rian. He was not the strongest nor the most experienced, but he had an endless fascination for worlds untouched by human hands. Where others saw risk, he saw wonder. Where others carried fear, he carried questions. The team had set up camp at the edge of a ravine where maps hinted at an entrance to one of the caverns. They worked with scanners, marking notes, measuring rock stability. The leader, a stern man named Morrow, warned the team not to go too deep until safety checks were complete. Yet as the evening fell and shadows spread long across the ridges, Ryan's eyes kept wandering to the dark slit of stone just beyond their camp. The entrance was narrow, half hidden by fallen rocks and thorny alien shrubs. A faint shimmer seemed to leak from inside as if the cavern itself was alive. The light was soft, not bright enough to catch the eye from far, but strong enough to tempt someone who was watching closely. Ryan felt that pull. He knew he should wait, but his heart whispered otherwise. That night, as the rest of the team worked around the campfire and argued over data, Ryan quietly slipped away. His steps were light, careful not to echo on the rocky ground. He carried only a small lamp and a recorder, telling himself it was just a quick look, nothing more. The cavern greeted him with silence. Cool air brushed against his face as he stepped inside. At first, the walls were plain stone, rough and sharp. But as he walked deeper, the glow grew brighter. Soon, the walls themselves began to change. Crystals jutted out in clusters, first small and dull, then larger and more vivid. They reflected his lamp in hundreds of tiny colors: blue, green, silver, and faint violet. The deeper he walked, the more the cavern seemed alive with light. It was as though he had stepped into the inside of a jewel. Rian stopped, breath caught in his chest. He had seen pictures of these caves, even small samples brought back to human stations, but none of that compared to standing here. It was not just beauty. It was presence. The cavern seemed to hum quietly, a vibration he could feel more than hear. He lifted his recorder, whispering softly into it. First chamber, walls lined with quartz-like crystals. Energy readings unknown, colors shifting with movement. His words were calm, but his hand trembled slightly with awe. The passage bent downward, and though reason told him to turn back, curiosity urged him forward. He ducked under a low arch of stone and found himself in a wider chamber. The floor glittered with fragments, broken shards that crunched under his boots like frozen grass. Above him, the ceiling dripped with crystal spears that glowed faintly blue, like an inverted field of stars. For a long while, he simply walked, letting his eyes drink in the sight. Every corner revealed new wonders. Pools of water that shimmered with floating light, walls that shifted colors when touched, cracks that whispered faint echoes. Then, something unexpected happened. A sound. It was not the drip of water or the crack of stone. It was soft, almost like a breath. Ryan froze, lamp lifted. His heart pounded. He had expected silence, but this sound was alive. "Hello?" he called, his voice shaking slightly. No answer came, but the faint sound repeated, gentle like a sigh or maybe a step. Ryan's lamp swung across the chamber, light sliding over crystal walls, but nothing moved. He swallowed hard, telling himself it could be the wind, air shifting through cracks. Yet the sound had rhythm, too natural to be only air. He forced himself forward. Each step echoed, mixing with that other sound. The cavern narrowed again, forcing him to turn sideways between two tall pillars of crystal. Beyond them, the glow was stronger, pulsing faintly as though the cavern itself breathed. Rian stepped through, and his eyes widened. The chamber before him was vast, higher than he could see, its walls lined with enormous crystals that shone like moons. In the middle stood a single column of stone, and on that stone, patterns shimmered faintly like markings. He walked closer, entranced, reaching his hand out to trace the shapes. That was when he felt it, the weight of eyes. He turned sharply, and his lamp caught a flicker of movement behind one of the crystals. His heart jumped. Something or someone was there. He stood frozen, unsure if he should call out again. His mind raced. No life had been recorded in these caves, no animals, no plants. Yet he was certain he was not alone. Slowly, carefully, he lowered his lamp. The glow of the crystals gave enough light to see by. He waited, breath held, watching the space between the crystals. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then a shadow shifted, and a figure stepped partly into view. It was not human. The figure was slender, graceful, with skin that seemed to reflect the crystals around her. Her eyes glowed faintly, not with the sharpness of lamps, but with a natural soft light like a reflection of the cavern itself. She looked at Ryan, unmoving, cautious. Rian's throat went dry. He had no words. His mind fought between wonder and fear. All he managed was a whisper, You're real." The figure tilted her head slightly as if studying him. Her face was unreadable, neither welcoming nor hostile, only curious. They stood in silence, two beings from different worlds, caught in the glow of the crystal cavern. Rian's lamp trembled in his hand, but his heart told him not to run. He had come seeking beauty, and he had found something far beyond it. The cavern seemed to close around them, filled with unspoken questions. Who was she? Why was she here? Was she alone? For the first time in his life, Rian felt both smaller and greater than ever before. Smaller because he stood before something unknown. Greater because he was the first human to meet it. The silence stretched, heavy with wonder and uncertainty. Then the figure slowly stepped back, retreating behind the crystal. The glow of her eyes faded, leaving Ryan alone again in the vast chamber, but he was not the same. Ryan stood still for a long while, his heart racing, his thoughts burning. He knew one thing clearly: he would return. Whatever she was, whoever she was, the cavern held more than crystals now. It held a secret that called to him stronger than any treasure or discovery. And so, with quiet steps, he turned back toward the entrance. The crystals glowed softly behind him, but in his heart, the glow burned brighter. The cavern had shown him something alive, something waiting, and he could not stay away. Rian could not sleep that night. Back at the camp, the rest of the research team gathered around their equipment, checking readings, logging details, and arguing over maps. Morrow gave his usual strict warnings about safety, about not rushing deeper into the unknown without careful steps. Ryan nodded and pretended to listen, but his mind was far away. His thoughts burned with the image of glowing eyes, faint as starlight, watching him from behind the crystal wall. He lay in his tent, staring at the canvas roof, the hum of the camp faint around him. But in his ears he still heard the soft sigh of breath that had echoed in the cavern. His hands trembled as he remembered her silhouette, slender, graceful, her skin glimmering like the crystals themselves. It had not been a dream. He had seen her. He closed his eyes, but the darkness only deepened his restlessness. He whispered into the night, "She's real. I wasn't imagining it." Morning came with the pale orange sun climbing slowly over the horizon. The team set out for surface surveys, measuring stone formations above the cavern. Ryan walked with them, pretending to focus on the work. But every step closer to the entrance pulled at him. He longed to slip away, to go back into the cavern to see if she was still there, but he forced himself to wait. He needed time. If he rushed, the others might notice. If they followed, everything would be ruined. Whatever secret the cavern held, it was not ready to be shared. Not yet. That evening, when the group returned to camp tired and distracted, Ryan quietly gathered his lamp, recorder, and a small pouch of dried food. He told himself it was just in case he stayed longer inside. His heart beat fast with both fear and excitement as he slipped once more into the hidden entrance. The cavern welcomed him with the same cool air, the same faint glow that grew brighter the deeper he walked. His boots crunched against the scattered shards, his lamp flickering against the crystal walls. But this time his steps carried a different weight. He was not only here to explore, he was here to meet someone. He reached the wide chamber where he had seen her before. He stopped, his lamp lowered, letting the natural glow of the crystals light the space. The silence pressed around him. He whispered, "I know you're here." His voice echoed softly, bouncing against the high ceiling. He waited. His chest rose and fell quickly, his fingers tight around the lamp handle. For a long while nothing moved. Doubt crept into his thoughts. Maybe she had left. Maybe she had been only a trick of light. But then, the glow shifted. From between two tall clusters of crystal, a faint figure appeared. Her movements were slow, cautious, like a deer stepping into an open field. The soft light of her skin shimmered faintly blue, reflecting the cavern's natural glow. Her eyes caught his gaze, bright and steady. Rian's breath caught. His voice came out as a shaky whisper. You are real." She did not answer, not with words. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. Her expression was calm but guarded. Rian forced a small, nervous smile. He held out his hands, showing they were empty. "I won't hurt you," he said softly. I only want to understand." The figure stepped closer just a few paces, then stopped. Her eyes never left his. Rian slowly reached into his pouch, pulling out a small wrapped piece of dried fruit. He unwrapped it, holding it out on his palm. "Food," he said, pointing gently to it, then to himself. "For me and maybe for you if you want." For a long while, she only stared at his hand. The silence grew heavy again, but Rian did not move. His arm began to ache from holding it out so long, but he remained still. Finally, with graceful caution, she stepped forward. Her hand, delicate, pale, almost translucent, reached out and touched the fruit. She lifted it, sniffed faintly, then took a tiny bite. Rian watched, hardly daring to breathe. When she swallowed, her eyes flickered with faint surprise, then softened. "You eat," Rian said gently, pointing again to her, then smiling. Her lips curved, not quite a smile, but something close. She tilted her head, then made a soft sound, a whispering tone, almost like wind through crystals. It was not a word he knew, but it was a sound of acknowledgement. Rian's heart leapt. It was not only that she accepted his gift, it was that she answered it all. "Thank you," he whispered. She watched him closely, then gestured faintly with her hand, a motion toward the chamber around them. Rian followed her gesture with his eyes, noticing the shimmering crystals glowing brighter where her hand moved. It was as if the cavern itself listened to her. "You live here?" Rian asked softly, pressing a hand to his chest, then pointing to the ground. "Here?" She paused, then nodded slowly. Rian nodded back, his eyes wide with wonder. "Incredible," he murmured. For a time they stood in silence, separated by distance but connected by something invisible. The cavern hummed faintly as if it shared their stillness. Rian dared to take one small step closer. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she did not retreat. His heart pounded, yet he forced his voice to stay calm. "My name is Rian," he said, pressing his hand again to his chest. "Rian?" He waited. She tilted her head, then touched her own chest lightly. A soft sound followed, gentle, flowing like a melody. It was a name, though not one his tongue could easily repeat. He tried anyway, softly shaping the sound, stumbling over the syllables. Her eyes brightened faintly, and for the first time, her lips curved into a real smile. Rian laughed softly, embarrassed, but happy. "Alira," he repeated carefully, choosing a simple form of the sound he could manage. "Alira." She nodded. The distance between them seemed smaller now. Rian spent the next hour showing her small things from his pouch, a folded piece of paper, a pen that clicked, a tiny light device. Each time her eyes widened with curiosity, her hands touching the objects with delicate care. In return, she guided him to a wall of crystals and placed his hand against it. At her touch, the crystal glowed brighter, pulsing faintly with warmth. Rian gasped at the sensation, looking at her in awe. The cavern was not just stone. It was alive in some way he did not yet understand, and she was part of it. But as the glow deepened, Rian realized time was slipping away. His team would notice his absence if he stayed too long. With regret, he lowered his lamp. "I have to go," he said softly, pointing back toward the entrance. "Tomorrow. I will come back. Tomorrow." Alira tilted her head, her expression unreadable. For a moment, he feared she would vanish without answer, but then she nodded once, slow and graceful. Relief and joy flooded Rian's chest. He gave a small bow, awkward but sincere, then turned toward the passage. His steps were reluctant, his heart heavy to leave. When he looked back one last time, she was still there, standing among the glowing crystals, her eyes shining softly as they watched him go. The cavern closed behind him, swallowing her figure in light and silence. Back at camp, the team was busy preparing evening reports. No one seemed to notice Rian's late return. He slipped into his tent, his mind spinning, his heart alive with fire. He whispered her name into the darkness. Alira. For the first time in his life, he felt he had stepped into something greater than exploration. greater than discovery. It was not only about the crystals anymore, it was about her, and he knew he would go back. Again and again, no matter the risk. The next morning began with the usual routine of the research team. Marrow and the others packed their tools and scanners, preparing for another long day of measuring surface cracks and collecting samples. Ryan followed them, but his mind wandered. Every stone he lifted, every note he scribbled was done with half a heart. His thoughts stayed locked inside the crystal cavern, where Alira's glowing eyes had watched him with quiet curiosity. He found himself smiling at odd times, earning sharp glances from Marrow. "Focus, Ryan," the leader snapped. "This isn't a playground." "Yes," Ryan replied quickly, hiding his excitement. But inside, he was already planning his next visit. When the evening finally came, and the camp returned to its slow rhythm of cooking and logging data, Ryan felt his heart beat faster. He waited until the others were busy with reports, then quietly slipped away again, lamp and pouch in hand. His steps carried him quickly to the narrow entrance. The cavern greeted him with the same cool air, the same faint hum that seemed to breathe through the stone. Each time he entered, the world outside felt farther away, as though the cave pulled him into its own secret rhythm. Ryan hurried past the first chambers, past the clusters of crystals that shimmered like frozen waterfalls. His heart beat faster with every step. Would she come again? Would she wait for him? He reached the wide chamber and lowered his lamp, letting the crystals light the space. His voice trembled as he called softly, "Alira?" The silence stretched. His chest tightened. He almost feared she would not appear. But then from between two pillars of crystal a glow moved. Slowly, gracefully, Alira stepped into the open. Ryan let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Relief washed over him. "You're here," he whispered with a smile. Her head tilted slightly, and though her expression was calm, he felt she recognized his joy. This time, Ryan did not rush to speak. Instead, he sat on a smooth rock, placing his lamp beside him, and carefully opened his pouch. He pulled out two small items, a folded paper bird he had made earlier at camp and a shiny button from his jacket. He set them gently on the ground between them. Alira's eyes flickered with curiosity. She stepped closer, crouched gracefully, and lifted the paper bird. Her fingers traced the folds, and when she gently moved its wings, she gave a soft sound, almost like laughter. The sound was quiet, but it filled Ryan's chest with warmth. "That's called a bird," Ryan explained softly, pointing to the paper, then flapping his hands like wings. "Bird." Alira tilted her head, then repeated, "Bird." The word was soft on her tongue, but it was clear enough. Ryan's eyes widened. She was learning. She was trying. "Yes," he said, nodding eagerly. "Bird." Her lips curved slightly, and she touched the button next, holding it up. She studied it, then placed it carefully against the crystal wall. To Ryan's surprise, the crystal glowed faintly at the touch, as if answering her. When she lifted the button away, the glow faded. Ryan's eyebrows rose. You can do that?" he whispered. Alira looked at him, then pressed her palm against the wall. The crystal brightened again, pulsing faintly with light. The glow traveled through the wall, spreading like ripples in water. The chamber filled with a gentle blue radiance. Ryan stood slowly, his eyes wide. "Amazing," he breathed. He touched the wall beside her, but when he pressed his palm against it, nothing happened. The crystal remained dark. He looked at her, puzzled. "Only you?" She nodded once, slowly, as if confirming. Ryan sank back down, overwhelmed by wonder. He realized then that she was not just living in the cavern. She was part of it. The crystals answered her. She belonged to them in a way he could not understand. For a time they shared silence, broken only by the faint hum of the cavern. Alira studied the paper bird again, her glowing eyes soft with thought. Ryan watched her, careful not to stare too openly, but he could not help admiring the way the light danced across her skin. At last, Ryan gathered courage. He pressed his hand to his chest. "Ryan," he said again. Then, pointing gently at her, he whispered, "Alira." Her eyes met his, and she nodded. She placed her hand against her chest and repeated softly, "Alira." Her voice, though faint, echoed in the chamber like a melody. Ryan's heart leapt. He smiled wide, unable to hide his joy. The next hours passed with slow discovery. Ryan drew small pictures on his paper, simple shapes, a sun, a tree, a person. He pointed to each, speaking their names, and Alira listened, sometimes repeating, sometimes only tilting her head in thought. She in turn guided him to crystals that sang faint tones when touched, teaching him how to listen to their different sounds. They did not need full sentences. Their gestures, expressions, and the few shared words built a fragile bridge between them. As they sat side by side, a quiet comfort settled between them. It was not yet friendship, not fully, but something close, something fragile and waiting to grow. But the outside world still pulled at Rian. He glanced at the faint light on his wrist device. The hours had passed quickly, too quickly. He sighed, looking at her with regret. "I have to go," he said softly, pointing back toward the entrance. Alira's expression remained calm, but her eyes seemed to dim slightly as if she understood. Ryan hesitated, then lifted his paper bird and placed it gently in her hands. "For you," he said quietly. "Keep it." She looked at the bird, then at him. Slowly she nodded, holding it carefully against her chest. Ryan stood, his heart heavy, and bowed his head slightly before leaving. As he walked back through the glowing chambers, he felt her presence behind him, watching until the crystals swallowed his figure. When he returned to camp, the others were already resting. He slipped into his tent, hiding his racing thoughts. He lay awake, whispering her name again into the darkness. Alira. The days that followed became a secret rhythm. Each morning, Ryan worked with the team, hiding his impatience. Each evening, when the camp grew quiet, he returned to the cavern. And each time Alira was there. Sometimes she waited by the wide chamber, her eyes glowing faintly. Sometimes she appeared later, stepping out from the shadows of crystal walls. Each time her presence filled him with wonder. They shared small gifts. He brought food, paper, or tools, and she showed him secrets of the cavern. Once she guided him to a pool of water that glowed faintly with floating sparks. When he touched the surface, the lights danced away from his fingers like living fireflies. Another time, she led him through a narrow tunnel that opened into a hidden chamber, where crystals rose like trees, filling the space with a gentle, colorful glow. Rian recorded notes in his device, but he kept them locked, never sharing with the team. Some discoveries were not meant for data reports. Some belonged only to him and her. As their meetings grew longer, their words grew too. Alira learned slowly, her voice soft but clear. She repeated names, asked simple questions with gestures, and even began to form short phrases. "Ryan, come," she said once, her words broken but full of meaning. The sound filled his chest with warmth. Ryan, in turn, tried to copy her melodic words, though his tongue stumbled. She laughed softly when he failed, but her laughter was kind, not mocking. Little by little, the cavern no longer felt like a place of mystery alone. It felt like a place of connection, but danger always waited at the edges of his thoughts. Morrow was not blind. One evening, as Ryan prepared to slip away, Morrow's sharp voice cut through the camp. "Where do you go every night?" Ryan froze. His heart thudded. He forced a calm smile. I walk near the ridge. To clear my head." Morrow's eyes narrowed. "Do not wander too far. This planet is not safe. If you put the team at risk, I will send you back to the ship." "Yes," Ryan said quickly, nodding. But inside fear mixed with determination, he could not stop. Not now. That night, when he entered the cavern again, Alira was waiting. The paper bird was still in her hands, folded neatly, its wings slightly bent but cared for. She looked at him with calm eyes, and for the first time, he felt she trusted him. He sat beside her, and the silence they shared was no longer heavy. It was gentle, like a friendship finally beginning to bloom. And in the heart of the crystal cavern, among lights that had shone for ages, two souls from different worlds found the first threads of connection. The days slipped into a rhythm that only Ryan and Alira shared. Every evening when the camp quieted, he made his way into the cavern. And every evening she appeared from between the crystal walls, her soft glow waiting for him. What had started as hesitation had grown into something steady, something that felt almost safe. They no longer needed long pauses or uncertain gestures to speak. Alira's words were broken, but she learned more each night. "Ryan, come back," she would say softly, and the sound of her voice made his chest warm. Ryan, too, learned to shape pieces of her melodic language. His tongue stumbled often, but when he managed a word correctly, Alira's lips curved into that faint smile that always left him speechless. The cavern was no longer only a place of discovery. It was a place of meeting, of sharing. Yet deep within the glittering tunnels there were parts Rian had not seen. Whenever he asked to wander further, Alira shook her head gently, guiding him back to the safe chambers. Not yet, she would whisper. One night, however, things changed. They sat beside one another near a pool that shimmered with floating sparks of light. Rian leaned over the surface, dipping his fingers in. The lights darted away from his touch like playful fish, then slowly drifted back. He laughed softly, glancing at Alira. Beautiful, he said. Alira nodded. Her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the water. She touched the pool with her hand and the lights flared brighter, swirling into patterns like constellations. Rian's eyes widened. You make them? Dance, he whispered. She tilted her head, then stood gracefully. Come, she said. Rian blinked, surprised. She had never invited him deeper before. Rising quickly, he followed as she slipped through a narrow passage behind the pool. The tunnel bent sharply, winding downwards, the glow of the crystals growing brighter the further they went. The air felt heavier, warmer, as though the cavern itself breathed around them. After several minutes, the passage opened into a vast chamber unlike any Rian had seen. His breath caught. The walls were lined with crystals larger than trees, their light pulsing like slow heartbeats. In the center of the chamber rose a single enormous crystal, glowing with deep, steady radiance. It was taller than a house, its surface smooth and flawless, its light shifting gently between colors, blue, violet, silver, then back again. Rian stepped forward slowly, awestruck. What is this? He whispered. Alira's eyes rested on the great crystal, her expression softer than he had ever seen. Heart, she said simply. Her voice carried both reverence and warning. Heart, Rian repeated, staring at it. The glow seemed to call to him, deep and silent, pulling at something inside. He felt his chest tighten as if the crystal looked into him. He tore his eyes away, glancing at Alira. It's alive, isn't it? She nodded slowly. Old, very old, watch. All. Rian swallowed hard. He could feel it. The weight, the presence, the quiet power in the chamber. He stepped closer, his hand trembling at his side. What does it do? He asked softly. Alira hesitated, then touched her chest. True? Rian echoed, puzzled. She nodded again. Heartsy inside. Rian's mind raced. A crystal that revealed truth? That showed the soul itself? His heart pounded with temptation. He wanted to touch it, to feel what she meant, to know what the crystal would reveal. He took another step forward, but Alira's hand shot out, her fingers grasping his arm firmly. Her glow brightened, her eyes sharp with warning. Not now, she said. Not ready? Rian froze, caught between her grip and the crystal's silent call. He looked at her, then at the great glowing heart. He licked his lips nervously. What happens if I touch it? Alira's expression darkened, shadows of memory flickering in her eyes. She whispered, change, forever. The words sank into him like stone. Change, forever. Rian swallowed. His hand trembled, but he let it fall back to his side. He nodded slowly. I'll wait, he said softly. Alira's grip eased. She studied him for a long moment, then released his arm. Her glow softened again, and she stepped back, standing between him and the heart. Rian sat slowly on the stone floor, his eyes still locked on the massive crystal. Its color shifted gently, almost like breathing. He could not look away for long. Something inside him still burned with curiosity, with desire. He wanted to know what it would show. But he also remembered Alira's warning. Her voice had carried weight, not only fear but experience. She had seen something. Maybe others who had touched it, maybe consequences too heavy to risk. Silence stretched in the chamber. The hum of the crystals filled the air, soft and steady. Finally, Rian whispered, Have you touched it? Alira's eyes lowered. She did not answer at first. Then softly she shook her head. No, not me. Her voice carried sadness, almost regret. Rian frowned slightly. Why? She lifted her eyes, meeting his gaze. Not ready, she repeated. Heart show truth. Truth heavy. The words sent a shiver through him. He realized then that the temptation was not only his. Alira, too, had faced it every day of her life. She had lived beside this heart, feeling its call, yet had resisted. He looked at her with new respect. She was not only cautious, she was strong. Stronger than him. Rian drew a deep breath, forcing his eyes away from the glowing heart. He focused on her instead. Then I will wait too, he said firmly. Alira studied him, her eyes softening. She gave a small nod. They left the chamber together, the glow of the heart fading behind them as they returned to the safer tunnels. Back in the familiar chamber near the pool, they sat quietly. Ryan felt his heart still racing, but the tension slowly eased. He glanced at Alira. "Thank you," he said softly. Her head tilted. "Thank?" she repeated. He smiled gently. "Yes, thank you. For stopping me." She blinked, then gave the faintest smile. The moment passed into silence, but the weight of the heart remained in Rian's chest. That night, back at camp, Rian lay awake in his tent, staring into the darkness. His mind replayed the glow of the great crystal, the way it seemed to pull at him. He shivered, remembering Alira's words, change forever. What truth would it reveal? What would it show him? Could he bear it? And another thought gnawed at him. If he touched it with Alira, what would it reveal about them both? The temptation grew, curling around his heart like fire. But when he closed his eyes, he remembered her grip on his arm, her voice steady with warning. He remembered her strength, her choice to wait. Ryan exhaled slowly. Not yet, he whispered into the night, but deep inside, he knew the heart would not let him go forever. It was only a matter of time. The morning sun painted the camp in pale gold, but for Ryan it felt heavier than usual. He had returned from the cavern only a few hours earlier, yet sleep had not come easily. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the heart crystal glowing in his mind, calling to him silently. He turned in his blanket again and again until finally the camp stirred awake. His fellow explorers moved with tired routine, checking instruments, heating rations, logging the previous day's findings. Ryan joined them, though his eyes were shadowed from lack of rest. He forced himself to act normal, but he could sense the subtle glances sent his way. "Ryan," called Darren, the team's survey leader, a broad man with sharp eyes. "You've been slipping off in the evenings again. You bring back no reports, no samples. Where are you going?" The words carried no anger yet, but suspicion lingered behind them. Ryan froze for a moment, then forced a casual shrug. "Exploring side tunnels," he said. "I don't want to waste everyone's time with half maps." Darren frowned. "Half maps are better than no maps. You know the rules. We share everything we find." Ryan's chest tightened. He nodded quickly, keeping his voice calm. "I'll note them tonight." But he knew he could not note everything. He could not write of Alira or of the heart, not yet. The day passed in slow effort. Ryan helped sketch new walls of crystals, measured energy flows, and adjusted scanners. Yet his thoughts wandered often, slipping back to Alira's soft voice and the light in her eyes when she smiled. Each time someone asked him a question, he jolted slightly, as though pulled back from somewhere far away. By evening, when the others gathered to share a simple meal, Rian quietly prepared to leave again. But this time 2 voices stopped him. "You're going again?" one of the younger members asked. His tone was light, but his eyes narrowed. "Yes," Ryan answered carefully. "Strange how you always go alone," another muttered. Darren, sitting nearby, watched silently. He did not speak, but his gaze followed Ryan until he left camp. The weight of those stairs pressed hard on Ryan's back as he entered the cavern. Inside, the familiar glow calmed him. The crystal walls shimmered softly, and he soon saw her, Alira waiting by the pool, her glow reflecting in the waters. When she saw him, her face brightened, a small relief to his troubled thoughts. "You late?" she said softly. Ryan sighed, kneeling near her. They watch me now. My people wonder where I go." Alira's expression shifted, a flicker of worry. She lowered her voice. "Danger," she whispered. "Too many see." Ryan looked at her, his heart tightening. "And you? Do your people not wonder where you go at night?" For the first time, Alira's eyes dimmed with unease. She glanced away. "They feel. Heart tell them. Some ask." Ryan leaned forward slightly. "What do you say?" "I say nothing," she whispered. Her voice carried weight, as though silence itself had been her shield. They sat in uneasy quiet. For the first time since they had met, their secret bond felt fragile, pulled from 2 sides. Ryan touched the water, sending ripples across the glowing surface. "How long can we hide this?" he asked softly. Alira shook her head slowly. "Not long." Her answer sank into him like stone. That night, after they shared quiet words, Ryan returned to camp. As he entered the circle of tents, Darren stood waiting. "You're late." Darren said, his arms crossed. Ryan kept his voice steady. The tunnels are wide. I lost track of time. Darren stepped closer, his eyes sharp. Don't lie to me, Ryan. I've led men long enough to know when someone hides something. Whatever you're doing down there, you'd better decide if it belongs to you or to all of us. Ryan felt his throat tighten. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. No words came. Darren studied him a moment longer, then stepped back. We came here as a team. Don't forget that. With that, he turned and walked away. Ryan stood in silence, his chest heavy. He could not tell Darren the truth, not yet. They would never understand Alira, never respect her world. To them, she would be only an alien curiosity, something to study, to capture. No, Ryan thought bitterly. Some truths were not for them. Far inside the cavern, Alira faced her own test. She returned late to her dwelling, a hollow chamber lined with pale crystals. Waiting for her was an elder of her people, tall and faintly glowing with a stronger light than hers. His voice was low, but it carried power. Alira, he said, the heart speaks. It whispers of change. You have walked paths unseen. Who guides you? Alira bowed her head respectfully. No one, she said softly. The elder's eyes narrowed. The heart does not lie. Something stirs in you. Be careful, child. Secrets have weight. She nodded silently, but her heart raced. She thought of Ryan, of his warm eyes and careful words. She thought of the heart crystal and how its glow had pulled at him. Secrets indeed had weight. Heavier each day. Days passed, and the tension grew. In camp, Ryan answered questions with half-truths, his lies clumsy but just enough to hold. In the cavern, Alira grew quieter, more thoughtful, as though always listening for footsteps that might follow her. Yet still they met. They could not stay apart. Each meeting was more precious, though edged with fear. One evening, as they sat together, Ryan reached into his pack. He pulled out a small object, a dull piece of human metal shaped like a pendant. He held it out to her. A gift, he said quietly. Alira blinked, tilting her head. She touched it gently, her fingers brushing his. Gift, she repeated. Ryan nodded. Yes, too. Remember me. She studied the small pendant, then slowly lifted it to her chest. Her glow touched the metal, and for a moment it shimmered faintly. Her lips curved into a soft smile. Thanks, she whispered. Ryan's heart warmed. For a moment, the worries of their two worlds faded. But when he left that night, Darren watched from the shadows, unseen. His eyes narrowed as he followed Ryan's path with suspicion. Later, as Ryan lay in his tent, he heard whispers among the others. They spoke of him. Too many absences, too much secrecy. Some believed he had found something valuable and kept it hidden. Others feared he had fallen under strange influence from the cavern itself. Ryan closed his eyes tightly. He wanted to tell them they were wrong, but deep inside he knew some of their fears were true. He was under the cavern's spell, not only its crystals but Alira herself. Far away, in her chamber, Alira clutched the small pendant to her chest. Its weight was new to her but comforting. She thought of Ryan's eyes, the way he had placed it in her hands. She thought of his people above the cavern, their strange tools and harsh voices. She thought of the heart crystal and how it pulsed whenever Ryan entered its chamber. She whispered softly to herself, "Not long. Secrets break soon." Her glow dimmed, but her heart shone bright with something she did not yet name. And so, in the shadow of the heart, two lives wound tighter each night. Even as the walls of their worlds closed in around them, temptation waited still, patient and steady like the great crystal itself, knowing its time would come.